My newborn's pediatrician is always so crowded in terms of size of waiting room versus number of people waiting. It requires a certain amount of etiquette controlling your kid, because there are no toys, no play area, no real space for shenanigans. Enter lady with 4 kids, a newborn, 2 toddlers, and a kindergarten-aged kid, little girl in question here. She really should have brought an iPad or a second adult or something, because her kids were literally running around this space, yelling and screeching. The mom was oblivious to all of her kids except the newborn, who was quietly breastfeeding while mom was glued to her phone screen. Accordingly, other people were put in the awkward position of having to discipline her kids. Several people had previously tried to put her kids back in line for whatever issue, harassing their kids, being loud, whatever. Her kindergarten-age daughter, who clearly had some kind of special needs, was absolutely enamored with my newborn and his stroller. She was asking me if she could push it around. No, she was getting super close to my newborn, stop, and was generally just being annoying. FFS at one point when I wasn't looking and was preoccupied with my own kid. She went digging in my diaper bag and throwing my stuff onto the chair and the floor. My newborn was really fussy because we were there for a sick visit and he wasn't feeling well. And I did not feel like entertaining some strange kid. I tried being polite about it. Sweetie, where's your mommy? Points to mom, ma'am. Points to kid. The lady would call her kid back, but the kid just kept coming back to me. Rinse and repeat. I told her she needed to stay with her mom. Little punk says I don't wanna and keeps trying to touch my son, my stroller, our stuff. Finally, I'm trying to fix a bottle of formula while holding a screaming baby and listening to this little girl like a broken record. Why is your baby crying? Why is your baby crying? Make him stop. I don't like that, and her annoying self knocks my bottle of formula off the table and into my stroller. So now I'm out formula, kid still screaming, and I have a huge mess that I don't have a great way to clean up. I'm at my wit's end. I raise my voice at this kid. Look what you did. I am not your babysitter. You are bothering me. Get out of my face. People looked at me like I was the biggest on earth. A lady speaking Spanish actually did call me a. The little girl starts crying. I'm not apologizing. The mom confronts me. I tell her she should have been watching her kid, and that's the hill I'm prepared to die on. I have a friend from high school who has a teenage daughter that recently started having fainting spells. I remembered that my nephew had this issue as a child and texted in Messenger to ask my older sister about what they found out about him and if it sounded like my friend's daughter. I asked via text because she is pretty busy. She answered that he still has it and it's a condition he has with anxiety and it overwhelms his heart sometimes. An hour or so later she started talking, again, via text, about how her son and daughter, both young adults now, are mentally handicapped and have psychotic episodes. Saying that the daughter totally made up the flea issue they had in their house and her mental issues caused her to break out in hives. This made me confused as I've been with her kids and even took my niece on vacation with us so she could ride the slides with my husband. Not my thing anymore, and she was perfectly fine. Well, an hour later my sister texted me saying all of that was not her. After she had told me about her son's anxiety issue, she had went to work and her husband. Yes, her husband had pretended to be her and even Googled all this BS up. I already had issues with her husband. He has lied and has had other issues before. To say I was angry is an understatement. Her husband, who is not her children's father, was bad-mouthing and telling me her kids are mentally unstable. Carl already has a past of being like this to her kids and my sister went along with it. I told her, that was it. I'm done. I went no contact for the past month, although I kept in touch with the kids. She has a younger son, age 15, and he does not get along with her husband, either. I told the elder too what he had said so they had a heads up. My sister defended him initially but apologized 2 days ago. I told her that her husband needs to apologize for himself, though. He is a grown man. Until then my kids and husband will not be attending anything outside of holidays at my mom's house, their neighbors. My mom can visit or I can visit her, but my kids will have nothing to do with her husband. Even after the apology, he will not be family to me or mine. He is deeply homophobic, drunk every time we visit, and racist. He is the reason my sister is not someone I want to raising my kids if something happened to us. My mom told me I should let it go, because family, but my husband backs me 100%. He claims he thought I knew it was him because they share a FB account. He was looking at other women's accounts and talking to them. So my sister insisted they share an account so he would not do that. Even if it were him not pretending to be my sister, he was spreading lies about two people I care for deeply. I have waited tables for the last 3 years. During my shift last night, a group of 4 women in their late 20s came in. They were a pleasure to have as customers. They ordered 4 of our house cocktails to start with and then went over the menu for their entrees. Then I was on my way back to their booth with the drinks on a tray. I walked by the back side and overheard one of them talking about how she was 14 weeks along. When I rounded back, they were talking about the same topic and it was clear to me that she was pregnant. I figured her having 1 drink wasn't a big deal. They ordered their entrees and I went off to handle other tables. About 5 minutes later, they called me over again and asked for another round. At this point I started getting concerned, but I took the order and cheerfully said I'd be right back. This time, I went to the bartender and asked him to make one of them a virgin cocktail. He was confused, but since he's a good friend of mine, I told him to just trust me. A few cocktails later, her strictly virgin, they started getting rowdy, and Mrs. Pregnant Woman was also getting into it. I figured that since she didn't notice, things were okay. The problem came when I took them their check, and they asked to split the bill at the register. When Mrs. Pregnant Woman got to the counter, I saw her cocktails were marked with virgin. My bartender had edited each in the system for inventory. It was too late for me to edit them back, so I just had her pay, hoping that she wouldn't look at the receipt. They all thanked me and left, leaving a generous tip in the process. They were talking in the parking lot for the next short while, presumably waiting for an Uber. Several minutes later Mrs. Pregnant Woman came back and asked what virgin on the receipt meant. I fessed up that it meant non-alcoholic. She blank stared me for a few seconds and then asked if she had ordered a non-alcoholic cocktail. I said no, but told her that I assumed she wanted one seeing as she was pregnant. It was a lame lie and I'll admit it, but she looked me in the eye and asked me to return her part of the tip. I did so. Then she talked to my manager. My manager took me into her office and literally shrieked at me until hoarse. I stood my ground and told her that I'm not going to be responsible for FAS. She told me that she was taking me off the calendar until she decided what to do with me. She also informed me that I could get the restaurant in serious trouble for discrimination. And upon examination of my state's laws, she is correct. But when I talked to my mother and father about it tonight, they told me that they understood my position. The entire staff at the restaurant is against me and I think that I'm going to call in and tell my manager that I quit. But I still feel in the right here. I am a 33-year-old female, and I have had fertility issues for the past couple of years with my husband. He's 35. We went through with consultations, and while we had very promising results for treatment, the cost did give us pause. It wasn't that we couldn't afford it, we just weren't at the point yet where we were willing to pay. I discussed it with my husband and we were both fine with the idea of adopting. My cousin Tiffany, woman 25 years old, is adopted and she supported our choice in looking into it. However, this was a couple of years back and during that time Tiffany was reunited with her birth parents, and she's been acting pretty hurtful to my aunt and uncle since then. She keeps making posts about how happy she is to know where she comes from and is happy about being reunited with her real family. She even talked about having her birth father walk her down the aisle as a chance to make up for lost time. Obviously my uncle was very hurt about this, but when he voiced it Tiffany got defensive. She called my uncle selfish, how this was about her and that he knew what he signed up for when raising someone else's kid. Before the pandemic Tiffany moved closer to where her bio mother lived so they could make up for lost time. And Tiffany kept making post after post about all the fun she was having meeting relatives. And how she called / video chatted with each of her bio parents multiple times a week. Meanwhile, she barely texted back my uncle and aunt once a month. I could tell how heartbroken my aunt and uncle were, but tried to give Tiffany her space, and the few times they said anything she accused them of being selfish and unsupportive. I think the biggest thing that broke them was when Tiffany promised to come by for my aunt's birthday and was even given the money to travel to them, but then never showed up. She called literally the day before to say that her bio mom had an emergency, so she wasn't going to make it, but didn't give back the money. I am completely disgusted by Tiffany's behavior, and while I haven't completely ruled out adoption entirely, I did want to give medical-assisted conception a try. My husband supported this, and we are now currently expecting. After we made our announcement, Tiffany messaged me asking why I would spend thousands on creating a child when I could help one who already existed. I tried to play it off, but Tiffany kept pressing and calling me a bad person when there are so many children who desperately need a home, and overpopulation. It got to the point where she was pissing me off, and I just came clean and said that her behavior towards the people who loved and raised her was the reason. Tiffany got really upset, but I didn't care. However, her parents are now starting to say that I was wrong.